Hello, and welcome to AACPS's Office of Instructional Technology's video on virtual collaboration. In this short tutorial video, we will cover various ways that you can use approved online tools to have your students work collaboratively in our virtual environment. So why is collaboration so important, especially right now that when we are virtual? Well, one, collaboration is going to increase student engagement. One thing we keep hearing over and over again when we're in this virtual world right now is that our students are not as engaged as they were when they were in the classroom. So collaboration is a way that is going to bring our students together and going to almost force them to actually actively participate. They're going to be much more inclined to do that maybe when it's in a small group, especially for our shyer students, than if they were in a full group setting. It's also really going to help to foster those relationships. And we know how important those relationships and that social emotional learning is to our students. And so being able to work together is really going to allow our students to get to know one another, especially when those opportunities are few and far between nowadays. So what are some ways and some tools that we have available here in AACPS that allow our students to collaborate online? Well, it's not as scary as you think. Oftentimes, one of the reasons teachers say they don't want to do collaboration is because they're just not sure how they can manage it. So we're going to go through some tips and some strategies, as well as some tools that really make collaboration easy. So the first tool or tools that we're going to talk about here is Google Slides and Docs. These, of course, are two of our main vehicles that we are using with our students while we are in this e-learning and virtual environment. And these are some really great ways that we can incorporate this idea of collaboration with our students. So in both cases, whether using slides or docs, you're going to have two options for having your students work collaboratively. One is in Google Classroom to have one file for the whole entire class that they would be able to be working in. The other option is to use one file per every small group. Now, in the example that is showing on the screen right now, in this case, this is going to be one file for each entire, for the entire class. And you can see that this is utilizing a couple of the tips and tricks that we have for managing the idea of working collaboratively in slides and docs. One, we've color coded the slides in this case. You can see here in the screenshot that going down the side, we have a slide for the green group, a slide for the yellow group, one for the blue group, and one for the red group. This is really going to help differentiate but for the students which slide they are supposed to be working on. It's also recommended that you can use individual tables and then assign rows or columns to students that they need to complete. So in this case, each student was assigned a specific column in this chart that they needed to complete. In this way, they're not then in danger of working over one another. They have a very specific task assigned to them. Now, you'll see as they're going through here, one reason we really like this idea, one thing we really like in docs and slides is the ability for the students to comment to one another as they go through. Now, using this comment feature allows the students to communicate with one another, for you as the teacher to see what that discussion is going to be as they are working and what that thought process is. As they're doing those comments, that can be done synchronously, where they're all working in the file at the same time, or it can also be done asynchronously. So if you have one student who may be absent for the day, they can go in and be working a little bit later and see what has been discussed with the rest of the class. The other thing with using that comment feature along the side is that Google remembers what those comments are and will add those as you go through. The other thing that we really like with slides and docs is that you do have version history for accountability. So your students can go in, or you can go in rather, and see what your students have actually done. This is always a big question when we're dealing with collaboration, is who is actually doing the work. Well, using the version history and docs and slides, which will color code for you who completed what aspect of the task, it was really going to hold those students accountable as you go through. To find the version history, you just need to open the document, go to File, and you'll find version history there. You can then, over on the right-hand side, click Open and be able to see who has done what. Of course, our Google tools are not our only options that we have available to us here in AACPS. One of the other ways that we can have students collaborate and work together is using the Smart Learning Suite Online, or the SLSO. And the Smart Learning Suite Online has something called the Collaborative Workspace. And the Collaborative Workspace allows us to take a template, such as this one that you're seeing on the screen now, and I can turn this into a activity for my students. So I can choose how many teams I want to have. In this case, I'm going to have two. I can move my teammates around so that I can shuffle them as I need to. And then once I start the activity for the students, they are going to be able to complete this activity with their teammate. And you're going to see that happen here in just a moment in our screen here. You can see our students have been working. I, as the teacher, have the ability to go in and see what they are doing live. So in this case, they're showing different ways to make 45 cents. I can switch back and forth between each team and then be able, through my Google Meet or whatever I'm using to communicate with my students, let them know if they are doing their work correctly or not. Of course, with this particular option, you're going to want to have your students make sure that they sign in with their Google account in order to access it. Now, another option that we have, aside from the SLSO, is discussion questions in Google Classroom. So our discussion questions in Google Classroom allow you as the teacher to post a question. It can be any topic that you wish, and students can respond to one another. The discussion questions is a great option if you have students working asynchronously. They will be able to carry on that discussion regardless of when it is that they're signing into Classroom. Wixie is another application that we have that's available for all of our students, K to 12, that has a collaborative option in there. So in this case, in Wixie, the teacher would go in and create the teams and have them work on a project. If you're looking for some activities to have your students do collaboratively, I highly recommend that you take a look at two websites that we in OIT have put together. The first one is Paper to Digital, and the second is our new digital takeout site. Both of these sites can be found on ClassLink in the bright orange Instructional Tech Resources folder. If you click into that, you're going to first find Paper to Digital. Paper to Digital is a website that has been designed to show you how you can take traditional projects that you've done with paper and have students complete them digitally. When you select a project type, in this case, I'm going to choose comic strips, it's going to pull up something that we call the matrix. And one of the rows on this matrix will tell you if the different applications are going to allow it to be done collaboratively with students. So in this case, for comic strips, we're showing that you can use Google Drawings, Slides, a specific website, PowerPoint, and Wixie. And if I look at my collaborative row, I'll have my little green check marks here to let me know which of those applications or tools will allow my students to complete that project in a small group or even a large group setting if I want them to. We have about 24 projects here on Paper to Digital, so I highly recommend that you take a look at this if you're looking for some inspiration. Not only does it have the matrix here, but you'll also find directions on how to create each of those in the platform once you've decided which platform you want your students to use to complete it with. Also on ClassLink in that orange folder, you're going to find our digital takeout site. Our digital takeout site is a website that is full of templates that were designed where you can just literally grab and go. So you can come in here, find something you want to use with your students, make a copy of it, and be able to use it pretty much instantaneously if you decide that's what you want to do. On here, we're going to have graphic organizers. We have a variety of templates that you can go in and use. Now, all of these are designed to be done collaboratively, but many of them can be done. So you'll see, for example, under building a classroom community, many of these activities can be done with your students collaboratively. We have digital game boards on here, Four Corners, Would You Rather. We have things for social emotional learning as well. I also want to point out, just because we had mentioned discussion boards earlier, we do have an entire list here of discussion questions that you could use with your students in Google Classroom. So we've tried to kind of take some of that workload off of you and give you some options for that. Here on Digital Takeout, we do have some other just virtual teaching templates that you can take a look at, notebooks, book snaps, Again, some of these are going to work really well collaboratively. For example, this visual vocabulary dictionary is a fantastic collaborative activity, but some other ones are going to be a little bit more designed to be worked on independently. But both of these websites are full of ideas, and I highly recommend you take a look if you're looking for some ideas for your students for activities for your students to complete collaboratively. So thank you for watching our brief video on different collaborative applications and tools that you can utilize in your classroom. We hope you have found a couple of tips and tricks or some resources that you didn't know about. And as always, please remember to follow AACPS OIT on YouTube, Twitter, and Pinterest.